Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now by journalist and blogger Papa Ismaila Dieng in Senegal's capital, Dakar. David Kiwuwa is an associate professor of international studies at the University of Nottingham's Ningbo campus in eastern China. And Mehari Taddele Maru is a security consultant and former African Union official who joins us from Nairobi. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. David, I want to begin with you. Obviously, the coup attempt was foiled, but there's still very big questions about the future of the Bongo dynasty and Gabon. What's the biggest question for you right now?
Well, thanks again for having me. It's a very interesting development in Gabon, and it looks like the political tensions have been basically festering for a long period of time. And therefore, the coup itself was much more basically a tip point of the kind of festering anxiety that has been existing in Gabon for quite a period of time, particularly since the 2016 elections. Now, the coup has happened, it has failed, and what does that mean? I think what it means going forward is an opening shot to basically send a signal that it may not necessarily be business as usual. This coup has failed, but who knows, maybe the next one may not fail. But at the same time, it may not necessarily be a coup itself, but rather sending a signal that there is a need for change, and that change perhaps should not be far away in the future.
Papa Ismaila Dieng, did the coup fail because the coup plotters were disorganized and not properly prepared, or because they didn't really have a lot of support among the people? Which one was it?
Thank you. I think it's mainly because they wasn't prepared enough and they didn't have enough support in the army, mostly. They asked people to go out, but people wasn't safe and secure enough to go out.
Right.
People are very shocked when they go out. So they needed first very big support from inside the army, and then after they should have the popular support from people. Like you in the image we see, you see how military are facing people. So people are not ready to go out for that. And the moment they choose, like people were sleeping, and the guy said, if you were sleeping, wake up. The people who were sleeping cannot hear him. I don't know if you, and that's for me the main problem. They wasn't prepared enough for that.
Okay, so Mehari Taddele Maru, Ali Bongo survived the coup attempt, but he's not well, and there have been many huge questions hanging over his leadership and the entire government. Do you agree with David that this might just be an opening shot and there might be more to come?
I believe David is on spot when he says that the politics in Gabon will not be the same since this coup attempt. Regardless of the level of authority and position of the coup authors, this has signaled that the public in general and within the army also for the first time, there is elements of the army that are dissatisfied with the current dynastic leadership of Ali Bongo, and also the continuation of that family for the past 50 years or so. So this is a big opening in addition to the pressure that was mounting since the last election with the opposition led by Jinping, who almost lost for less than 5,000 votes, if you wish. So that is a very significant event that the existing regime cannot continue with the kind of legitimacy deficit it's facing unless some course is changed in addressing the fundamental legitimacy questions that are being raised on Ali Bongo's regime.
Right. David, those who were involved called themselves the Patriotic Youth Movement of the Gabonese Defense and Security Forces. The government has tried to trivialize them, belittle them, said they're basically nothing and they will have no impact. And within all the chaos and the turmoil, there were many people calling for jumping as an alternative to Ali Bongo. Tell me how the two match and whether this is perhaps an opening for people calling for Mr. Ping to be their legitimate leader?
I think what the coup did, and the junior officers who led, I think the very failure of the coup signaled that they did not have the support of the upper ranks of the military establishment. But at the same time, as you did point out, that the coup leaders seem to be appealing to the rather disaffected youth in Gabon, who are living in dire poverty, despite the fact that the country is one of the biggest oil producers in Africa, for that matter. But then again, of course, the issue of Jinping, whether he's an alternative leader, was already answered at the ballot box. The fact that he came to, as the previous speaker said, came within 5,000 votes of upsetting the status quo does point that he's a really credible alternative leader. I mean, he has the pedigree of having been in the Bongo dynasty cabinet for quite a very long period of time. He served in the African Union for a significant period of time. So he's garnered a degree of credentials that would offer him as a credible alternative to the Bongo dynasty. And therefore, going forward, it is a question of time, of if the next elections run, is it rather that it will be third time lucky, that actually this time he may come through? Specifically, if he appeals to the very big disaffected youth who are suffering from high levels of unemployment.
Is Mr. Ping, Papa, a credible alternative to Bongo if things happen to drift in that direction?
The first problem is Ping is a member of the Bongo dynasty. He had been married to Pascaline Bongo, who is Ali Bongo's sister. They have 2 or 3 kids, I don't know. And the main problem in Gabon is that it's a familial problem people are trying to solve politically. At one moment, Ping disagreed with the rest of the family, and he went out and trying a bit an opponent. He had been in the system with Ali Bongo's father for years and years. He had been a long time foreign affairs minister. So, in some Gabonese people, he is not really a real alternative. It would just be the same dynasty, just changing their skins, turning the other side of peace. So, the people are trying really to find another one alternative, but if they don't have, let's say, they don't have the choice, they will go with Jinping and trying now to constrain him to do what people are expecting from them.
Understood. Let's look at some of the bigger bodies here. The African Union, Mehari, as somebody who was formerly in a role with the AU, as they saw the events unfolding with the now foiled coup in those corridors of power in Addis Ababa, how would they have been reacting? Would they have been making contingency plans and thinking about possible alternatives?
No, I don't think so. The first one is we have already well-established system of response to coup d'etats. The first one is there is no bad or coup d'etat. All coup d'etats are bad. That is very important in terms of ensuring legitimacy. You cannot have a very useful fruit from a poisonous tree. Basically, coup d'etats are poisonous in Africa. Historically, they were devastating and disastrous, and they have to be avoided at all costs. So the AU has taken a very progressive, though some of the leaders have come to power through coup d'etat, but they want to end it with that. So there is a marriage of convenience here, but it's very useful for Africa that there is no coup d'etat, there should be an end to coup d'etat. The second fundamental question is not about alternative, whether Mr. Jinping will be a good alternative or not. The first question is, where do we stand now in terms of constitution in Gabon? The constitution is not a constitution that allows for legitimacy to be enshrined in the governance system. So we have to address the constitutional shortcomings that are existing now, which entrenches existing incumbent government and could allow the dynasty to continue. As such, there is no problem if the elections were to be conducted under a very refined and democratic constitutional system. So the first question is the constitution. Now, the constitution has to be reformed. Of course, the response towards the coup d'etat from AU is clear. That is a total rejection, as the chairperson rightly and immediately responded through his Twitter handle. But the question of legitimacy remains there, that there is a need for reform in the constitution, that there is a need for the public participation in election that is credible, both credible inside in the country by the public and credible outside by international community, including the African Union and other regional economic communities as they participate in the observation. Like I said, the difference between Ali Bongo in the last election and Mr. Jinping is very, very narrow. That aside, there were a lot of questions about the credibility of the election. What this coup d'etat does is basically, regardless of its success or failure, is that coup d'etats always trigger a political discussion, a political big image problem for the existing dynasty, and they have to be addressed now. The legitimacy gap has to be addressed now before they get out of control. Given that also the incumbent is not in a very good health to ensure a smooth running of the government, and later on also reform of constitutional level, and then the electoral arrangement that exists. It's only through this that you will have alternative that is credible and of the people, for the people and by the people.
David, failed coup d'etats also usually trigger crackdowns. We saw the internet was shut down in the aftermath of this. Are we to expect the Bongo dynasty to tighten its grip over the next few months?
I guess that is only natural. There's going to be an interesting review of whether they had collaborators beyond the junior officers, and that they may want to be mopping up to make sure that such things or such attempts do not happen again. But to come back to the issue of succession and alternatives, I would like to believe that long incumbents, if we look at Zimbabwe, if we look at Congo, DRC, what has happened is that our long-term presidencies have always sought to have our in-house succession systems. So in Zimbabwe, they wanted to get somebody from the Mugabe's ZANU-PF regime. In the DRC, we have seen Shadri being nominated and being pushed or scouted as the successor to Kabila. So I suspect that going forward, the reality is that Ali Bongo has been, the health, the stroke is going to have a lasting impact on his robustness and health. And therefore, also reflecting on the fact that he almost lost the election. And I would like to remind the viewers here that while people may say that those elections were not very credible, well, I think Jinping came very close to winning. And therefore, it does show that to some degree, there was an element of credibility. I mean, that is a question of degree. So there was an element of credibility that almost afforded Jinping, an ability to win. So in that respect, I think Ali Bongo may try and will try to know that the clock is ticking, and therefore it is time for him to look within his party to find whether they can designate a successor who is able to safeguard not only his legacy, but also the entire factionary of this party if going forward.
Papa Ismaila Dieng, all things considered, talking about the clock ticking, when we look at the economy, it's not doing too well. A lot of people are still in poverty despite all this massive oil wealth, and there's restlessness within the army, as we've seen. Has Ali Bongo passed his sell-by date?
No, I think the problem right now is that the Bongo dynasty is trying to find the better way to get out of all of this. The first thing is they are going to find traitors in the army and in the political sectors. The other thing now is to appoint the best successor to keep the power into their hands. And Ali Bongo, I think, will never come back to the power. I think that he's not going well enough to be back in Gabon as president. That's my opinion. The other problem is there will be maybe a little war into this family, because remember when Omar Bongo passed away, the question was, who will be the successor? Would it be Pascaline? Would it be Pascaline's husband? Or would it be Ali Bongo? And then it was Ali Bongo. And I think that Pascaline and other people did not really forget their ambition to be in charge one day.
Okay. Gentlemen, it's been good to talk to all of you. Thanks for helping us gain deeper insight into what's going on in Gabon. Papa Ismaila, Dieng, David Kiwuwa, and Mehari, Taddele, Maru. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers.